it's Liz, and I'm one of the Youth Services librarians here at Middle Country Public Library, and we are so excited to be kicking off the 2020 Summer Reading Club. So this summer, we're asking you to imagine your story through a series of really exciting activities that we have planned for you, and one of those activities is going to be to start your own journal this summer. I thought it would be fun today to teach you how to make your own journal using two super simple binding techniques, using items that you probably have in your house already. So whether you're a kid, a teen, or an adult, doesn't matter, you could definitely do this, and I'm going to show you how. So why don't we go ahead and get started. All right, so journal number one. Again, super simple. For this one, you are going to need a hole puncher, but don't worry, because if you don't have a hole punch at home, the journal I'm going to show you next, it does not require a hole puncher, so don't worry too much about that. But this journal is actually really nice because you can bind it in a way that lets you open it flat, which makes it a little bit easier to write on. So I am going to go ahead and show you how to make this. So what you're going to need for this journal is a pair of scissors, a hole punch, and a ruler. And then you're either going to need some ribbon or some yarn or string or something like that, as well as some duct tape. I have some fancy, funky, fun duct tape here, but you could use whatever you have lying around. And if you don't have duct tape, you can use masking tape, just anything that's going to reinforce the hole punches on your front and back cover of your journal. And speaking of the front and back cover, what we're going to use to make those are, these are like the top and bottom to a shoebox. So if you have a shoebox at home, you can use that, or you could even use a cereal box, macaroni box, anything that's like a nice thin cardboard that you can easily cut through, right? All right, so step number one is we are going to have to cut out our front and back cover from our shoebox. And we want to make sure that it's a nice size for our paper. The first thing I'm going to do is actually just cut off the sides here just to make it a little bit easier to work with. And then once I have this flat part, we'll kind of measure it out. And I'll show you how to do that too. So I'm just going to cut around the ends here to get those edge pieces off. And I'm just quickly cutting because this part doesn't matter so much if my cuts are nice and neat, because I'm going to trim it down more. All right, so I have one flat piece of cardboard now. And so what I'm going to do to get a good size is I'm actually going to take some of a piece of the paper from the pile that I'm going to use for the inside of my journal, and I'm going to just fold this in half. Just like that, because this is the size that I ultimately want my journal to be. And so if I cut out the front and back cover in this size already, it'll be really easy to stick all my paper in instead of having to cut each individual piece of paper to match the size of my front and back cover, right? So again, I'm just taking one piece of paper and I'm folding it in half just like a little book. And then I'm actually just going to go ahead and trace this on my cardboard. Again, I'm using a shoebox, but you can use any cardboard you have at home that's easy to cut through. So like a cereal box, pasta box, and if you have cardstock, you could use that too. It's a little bit thinner, but it'll still work for sure. All right, so I have my rectangle traced on there. And now I'm going to cut this one out a little slower so it's nice and neat, right? So I'm just cutting along those lines that I traced from that folded up paper. And if you're using a cereal box at home and you don't like the design or anything like that, if you want to cover it, you could cover it with duct tape, you could cover it with washi tape. You could even just cover it with paper that you glue on or construction paper. And actually the journal I'm going to show you next is covered in wrapping paper. So I'll show you how to do that too. And that way it kind of just covers up the images on your cereal box. All right, so I have my front cover for my journal cut out. And now I'm actually just going to use this to trace the back cover. Just because this is a little thicker than the paper, it's easier to trace. So I'm going to stick that right inside there. And I'm going to go ahead and trace that rectangle to make my back cover. All right. Beautiful. All right, now I'm going to cut this one out. So if you're a kid, you might need a grown-up to help you with this part, just because depending on what type of cardboard you're using, you might need to use some sharp scissors. And that's okay. All right. All right, so now we should have two perfectly matching front and back covers, just like that. Wonderful. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to get out our paper to fill our journal. Now, you probably don't want to use a ton of sheets of paper because remember, you're going to have to hole punch through all of this. So, try to plan out however much you want, and you can always actually add more later on if you need to. But I'm going to start with probably actually half this amount. So we'll start with that much. And again, we're going to go ahead and fold these sheets in half. Now, when I fold them in half, they're automatically going to be the right size to fit in between my front and back cover, right? Because that's how we decided how big the covers should be. And that makes it nice and simple, so I don't have to cut this paper down at all. All I have to do is fold it in half, and it is good to go. All right, so you can kind of tuck it all into each other just like that, like you're making a little book. Now what you're going to want to do is punch your holes for the binding, right? And in order to do that, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure a centimeter and a half from the spine of the journal. You don't want to punch the hole too close to the edge because then the ribbon or string or yarn or whatever it is you're using can rip out a lot easier, right? So we're going to go about 1.5 centimeters in, and I'm just going to mark a little dot where I want to punch that hole. And I'm going to make 3 hole punches. So I'm going to do one towards the top of the journal, one towards the bottom of the journal, and one in the middle. Just like that. And I don't know if you can see those little dots or not, but I didn't even measure out exactly where to put them. I just kind of eyeballed it, and that's fine. All right, so now I am going to take my handy dandy hole puncher, and I am going to go ahead and punch over those 3 dots that I just drew. Right over those dots to punch those holes. And depending on what kind of cardboard or cardstock you're using, you might have to apply a lot of pressure. So you might need a grown-up to help you with this part too. All right. So now we have our 3 holes punched in there. So now I'm actually going to just use this as a template to punch the holes through my pages and my back cover. That way I know that all of my holes are going to be lined up, right? So we'll do the back cover first. So I'm just going to line these 2 up just like a sandwich, just like that. And I'm just going to put my hole puncher over the holes I already punched in the front cover. And I'm going to punch again to put matching holes in the back cover. 1, 2, and 3. All right, so now I have 3 matching holes on both the front and back covers. Now we need to go through all of our pages. Now remember, these are folded in half and they're pretty thick, so you're probably going to have to take them apart and just do a couple pages at a time, which is fine. So I'm actually just going to do a couple pages just to show you how it works. When you're doing this at home, you can do as many pages as you want. So again, I'm going to use the front cover as a template, just like that. And I'm going to hole punch through those sheets of paper. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. All right, beautiful. So now we have a front cover, we have pages to write in, and we have a back cover. Now what we need to do is we need to bind it all together to hold it. So I'm going to take my ribbon and I'm going to take my duct tape and we're going to get this ready. So the reason why I'm going to put duct tape on here is to just kind of reinforce this binding a little bit, to kind of add another extra layer to where you have the holes punched, and that'll just kind of help it last a little longer. So I am going to rip off a piece of duct tape that's just a little bit longer than the length of my journal, just like that. Cool. And I'm going to actually go right over these holes because I'm going to punch through this duct tape as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line the duct tape up to the edge of that cardboard, just like that, and smooth it over. And then you can either trim off the ends or just fold it over the top and bottom. That's what I do, just to give it a little extra protection up there too. All right, so now you can see on the inside, you can still see those holes that you had punched. And I'm going to use that to punch holes through the duct tape. So we have got, let's see here, 1 hole, and 1 more, and 1 more. Beautiful. So now we have 3 holes punched in the reinforced spine of our front cover. And I am going to do the same exact thing for the back cover. And there we go, we have our back cover done. So now we are gonna line this all up with our paper in the middle. And now since we punched those holes together, we should have a nice even stack here where the holes are all lined up. Sometimes it takes a little bit of moving it around just because you've got those pages folded together. So there we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, and my holes are all lined up. All right, so now we're going to take our ribbon and I'm going to cut off like, 5 or 6 inches of ribbon, however long you want it to be. You can always trim it down after you tie it. Now there is a little bit of a trick to this part because you don't want to tie the ribbon or string through these holes too tight. Otherwise you won't be able to open your journal very well, and I'll kind of show you what I mean by that. So this first one I'm going to do, I'm going to put through the holes on the top here, and I'll show you what happens if I tie it too tight. I'm going to put a double knot in here, and if I tie it all the way down, now when I try to open my journal, you can see it doesn't really open up flat, which makes it a little bit harder to write on. So I'm going to cut that off and show you how I like to tie it a little bit looser so your journal lies nice and flat. All right, so again, I'm just cutting off about 6 inches of ribbon. And so this time I'm actually going to go through the middle because that's how I like to start it. It makes it a little easier to hold on to when the middle is bound first. So I'm putting my ribbon through the holes in the front cover, the paper, and the back cover. All right. Now, in order to get my ribbon tied loose enough, what I like to do is just put one of my fingers in the middle here, just like that. And then I tie the ribbon around my finger and the journal. So I know that there's like, a good like 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch in there. And I'm going to double knot it. Just like that. So now you'll see there's a lot of space in here and your journal kind of moves around a little bit, but that's okay because now your journal is going to lie nice and flat for you when you open it up. See, I'll show you. Just like that. All right, so let's do the top and bottom. All right, so now since I used ribbon, I can make this a little extra fun by curling these ends, or you could just cut them off, whatever you like best. This is all yours, totally personalized and customizable to however you want it to look, right? Okay, we'll do this one, and this one. All right, and that is all you have to do. Now I have my very own journal, super simple and easy to make, as many pages as you want in there. All right, so why don't we go ahead and make journal number 2. All right, so journal number 2 is actually even easier to make than the first one. And this one, you don't even need a hole punch or anything. All you need is some cardstock, or again, you could use a cereal box or something like that. This one is a little bit easier if you just use cardstock, a little thinner. Some paper to fill your journal with, a pair of scissors, a ruler, and a nice thick sturdy rubber band. If you don't have a rubber band at home, you could definitely use like an elastic hair tie or something like that, but you do want it to be pretty thick and sturdy to hold your journal together, right? All right, so as you can see, for this one, I used cardstock, this same cardstock right here, but I actually glued wrapping paper onto it to give it a nice cool looking design. So you can do that at home if you have wrapping paper or any other kind of decorative paper you want to use, scrapbook paper, anything like that. If you don't want to have just like plain cardstock, all you have to do is glue your cardstock onto your sheet of wrapping paper and then cut it out, and that's it. Super simple. All right, so just to show you how to make it, I am going to use this plain piece of cardstock right here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to fold this in half. So for this journal, we don't have a front and back cover separate. It's actually all together using one piece of cardstock, just like that. Fold it in half. And I like to use my ruler too to just kind of slide it along that fold to make it nice and crisp. Right? Make sure your edges are nice and matched up, just like that. All right, so now you have like a little book, right? Now what you're going to need to do is you're going to mark on your cover where you're going to cut notches to attach your rubber band. And so I like to go, again, like 1.5 centimeters in from the spine, and you're also going to have to go like 1.5 centimeters down from the top and up from the bottom as well. So I'm going to measure that out. And it does not have to be exact at all. So if you don't have a ruler at home, no big deal. You can definitely eyeball it. That's what I do most of the time. All right. So I just kind of drew 2 dots on here, and I'm going to make them a little bit bigger so you can see exactly where they are. Hopefully you can see that. And instead of hole punching this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out 2 notches. So I'm basically going to be cutting out 2 rectangle type shapes. On the top and bottom of this cardstock, you can kind of see what that looks like, right? When it's folded together, looks like that. So I'm going to do that using these dots that I drew as kind of a guide for where my notches are going to go. So I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to snip one there. And you definitely want to make sure your notch is wide enough for the thickness of your rubber band. In fact, it should be just a little bit wider. So I can just put my rubber band there to kind of see how wide I need it to be. And that's how I will know where to put the other cut, about right there. Just like that. And then you're going to cut this little square right out of there. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And using that little dot as a guide, I'm going to cut right down like that and then cut that right off. All right, so now you can see this has notches cut in it just like this one. All right. Now, the next part is you need to also cut those same notches through your paper as well, because the rubber band needs to also hold your paper inside. So I'm going to just take a couple pieces, and again, you can do this with as many sheets of paper as you want to cut through. And you might have to do it in batches, like a few sheets at a time. That's totally fine, but this way you can put as many as you want in there. So I am going to fold this paper in half, just like I did with the cardstock. Just like that, and I'm going to put it inside here so I can see how it measures up. Very nice. And then you can actually just take a pencil and trace those notches that you cut in the cardstock front and back cover, and that's how you'll know where to cut to make exactly matching notches in your paper as well. So I'm actually going to unfold this just to make it a little bit easier to cut through, but since I traced it on the front and back, I have all 4 notches that I need to cut when it's unfolded, right? So I'm going to cut there, and again, you're going to just cut that right out, and I'm going to cut right there. And another cut. And last one. For me anyway. You might have to do this a couple times depending on how many sheets of paper you decide to use. If you want a nice thick journal that you can write a lot in, you're probably going to have to do like a few batches of these, right? So now I'm just going to take my paper that I cut and I'm going to stick it right inside my cover there. And you can see all of those notches are nicely lined up. And now the last thing you have to do is just take that thick rubber band or hair tie. You could honestly even just use like a piece of yarn or string and tie it. Might be a little tricky to get it the right, tension, but you could do that too for sure. But you're going to take that and you're going to put it through the top notch, and then you're going to stretch it down through the bottom notch. And you can see I actually wanted this to happen so I could show you. My journal does not have a lot of paper in it, so my rubber band is really strong and is kind of squishing it. You can make that go away by using more paper, which will make your journal a little bit sturdier, right? So I can show you exactly how that will work. And again, I'm just going to open that up, and I'm going to take some more paper. And I'm going to trace my notches here one last time. Wonderful. And I'm going to cut right through there to get those notches through this paper. Now, if you did use like a string or yarn or something like that, then you don't really have to worry about this so much because it's not going to really pull on it too hard. It's only going to be pulling as tight as you tie it, right? But since you're not tying the rubber band and you're just relying on the rubber band's elastic to kind of hold everything together, then you kind of have to work with what you've got, right? All right, last cuts. And one more. Now the nice thing about making your own journal is you can customize it completely how you want it to look. You can decorate it in so many different ways. You can add as many or as little pages as you want. Whatever you want, you can make it happen, right? All right, so now I'm just going to fold these sheets in half so they can go inside my journal. Just like that. I'm going to put them all inside each other. All right, now you can see this is a lot thicker. And I'm going to put my cover back on. And now watch what happens this time when I put that rubber band in. Oops, one of my squares didn't get cut out. Let's try that again right there. Sometimes when you stack a lot of paper too, you'll notice that it starts to not be lined up as much, but that's fine because you can just trim it however you want it. All right, so now I'm going to take my rubber band again, put it over the top, stretch it into that bottom notch, and now look at that. It holds it nice and neat together without scrunching up my journal. So now you will notice when you open this one up, it doesn't lie as nice and flat as that other one with the hole punch and the 3 strings. But that's okay because you can still write on one side or the other, just as easy. Okay. All right, and there you have it. That's journal number 2. I hope you enjoyed watching me make these journals today. I hope you will make your own and share them with us. You could take some pictures and share them in the comments on our Facebook post with this video. You can email them to us, summerreading@mcplibrary.org. And of course, do not forget to sign up for the Summer Reading Club online today. Bye.